Welcome back to Brighter Morning, and I think we got the connection right now, and we will talk to Mark Edghill. Good morning again, Mark. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Bo. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're good now.
Awesome.
Let's
Thank God.
let's increase the volume for you so people can hear. And I want to start by asking you, what's your initial reaction to the budget coming from the sector that you do and representing so many interests that are in the services sector? What's your response?
Well, the first order of business for us was the fact that services, or at least the TTCSI, did not see sufficient grants or support being provided for the wider services industries. We did see the 50 million allocation for the MSMEs, which included some ICTs and business startups. But we also saw that that was allocated specifically or had to be related to the manufacturing sector, which of course is something that I've spoken to, that I believe it should be opened up to all types of business services once they meet the criteria, to be allowed to access that kind of funding to develop their services. We saw, with respect to the tourism sector, 50 million grant as well to the hotel industry to upgrade their accommodation, the quality of their accommodations, which is significant and desperately needed for them to be able to offer better product on the open market. Um, we have, for example, the efforts by the TTCSI to build and grow services and to better organize and structure services. And we've done that through our Services Go Global, our Gateway to Trade, our National Services Exporters Portal. And one of the problems we have is we need to have a national services strategy properly developed and implemented. And TTCSI is prepared to do that with the government, to have a comprehensive plan to work on and move forward. So, I mean, that said, the initial feeling about the budget seems fair enough. A lot more allocations to the various sectors at a time when we assumed that there was insufficient funding, especially based on the fact that so much had to be invested or utilized from limited resources to manage the pandemic. We have, luckily, several sectors who are benefiting significantly. Agriculture being another one, which again we also need to have better organized and more production coming for our own food supply sustainability also, and hopefully even developing on exports there. But just to speak a little bit, if I can, or unless you have another question for me, I can get into a little bit about what the services go global and so on deals with through the TTCSI.
No, you're welcome to do that because it's good for our viewers to know and understand what you do. Okay? So
Okay,
go ahead
so
and elaborate on that.
through the services go global, we've had training done for 140 individuals. We have 140 graduates over the last 2 years. And those individuals go through 4 stages of training, which goes over 12 modules, to give them the knowledge and tools in order to put together their export plan and to become better organized in their operations locally also. In terms of the Gateway to Trade, which is a fully funded program by Caribbean Export, we have 80 firms right now that have been selected. It was launched on the 3rd of September this year. It was it's a program that is going to run for 9 months, and that is literally going to take each candidate handheld, walking them through the process to identify their opportunities, to build their capacity for export, to analyze their business opportunities, to put structures to their business where they may not exist, and basically prepare them to effectively offer their business on the open market, and actually by the end of the program have access to those markets that have been identified. So it's a plan that is going to literally take an individual and a service provider from a stage of only doing business in Trinidad to now being structured and properly trained to offer a service to an international standard on the open market. So that is one of the big things that we have right now that we are seeking support for, and we need obviously additional government support for the promotion of the services sector. We mentioned before as well how much is put behind manufacturing. Manufacturing is a well organized industry and sector, and services is not. But services has so much more potential for earning foreign exchange and for its contribution to GDP in Trinidad and Tobago. So services does play a significant role, and the TTCSI has the tools, the ability, and the willingness to support the development of the services sector. But we cannot do it in a vacuum. We cannot do it by, butting our heads up against a wall every time we're trying to make progress for the betterment of our economy and the betterment of our individuals in the service sector and our various service providers. We need to see more support from the government. And like I said, one of the things that is disappointing is when we do get allocations, for example, the 50 million for the small and medium enterprises, that we see that the shift is taken only if it's applicable to the manufacturing sector. So as I said earlier, it should be opened up to everybody else, so that once they meet the criteria, they have the ability to grow there. We see in.
What is the
Go ahead.
structure of support? What is the structure of support for financial viability for TTCSI to do its work in terms of government and private sector?
So what we are doing, what we get right now is we get a subvention of 700,000, which covers or assists with our operational costs, and it is not sufficient because of the amount of staff that is required for the research that needs to be done to analyze those opportunities and to find the markets that we need to actually develop our services to access. So while we get 700,000, and we are very grateful for it, because I know it's more than the chambers get for their subventions, but TTCSI has had to embark on additional independent projects where we are taking on more research. We're going more in the direction of research studies that are required by external institutions that are paying us and awarding us the contract to handle the research and providing surveys and data that they require for their specific development planning and needs. So TTCSI is looking at working towards becoming self-sustaining and not dependent on subventions, but at the same time, the aspect of the development of the sector, that is and should be the responsibility that the government needs to put some funding behind, so that it can, the potential can be maximized, because the potential is there, but it just needs some life.
What about the opportunity presented in the budget? The minister basically gave incentives to companies for research and innovation. Couldn't some of the companies, in going about their research needs and in looking at the issue of innovation within their business, couldn't they then provide funding to TTCSI in order to do that research, and that would then be taken into account in terms of their literally a tax break for them, because they have the incentive to do that? Could that work? I mean, do you need to do some stakeholder work?
Right. So that is exactly what we would like to see, the utilizing of that type of approach. But the problem that we have is that throughout the budget, there are several, services has received funding, but it's been sprinkled around to different sectors. Right, tourism, ICT in particular has a lot of focus on it for the digital transformation. Um, but we TTCSI is interested in helping to make it more organized, bring it under one umbrella, similar to what the TTMA does, where we can provide the focus, provide the structure for the rollout of the funding for the sectors that are being supported or the grants are being given to, that have been allocated in the budget, so that we have a better plan to roll out all the funding that the government is prepared to provide. Um, but definitely, as you say, the digital transformation and that push that the government is making with all businesses, it does put the potential for those different service providers to tap into that. But at the same time, we're still looking at the opportunities that exist externally where we need to develop that access. We need to develop the service providers in Trinidad so that they are prepared to offer their services at an international standard. One of the issues that we have is there are a lot of people. You may have two providers of the same service, but one is very well organized and one is not. You have both of these potentially going on the open market looking for business. What kind of reputation or what kind of performance are you going to get from one versus the other? And do you want the risk of being negatively assessed by the open market, that if someone is looking to approach you to do business from Trinidad, they say, well, nah, Trinidad don't have any standards. Trinidad, we've had a bad experience or whatever. This is what we're trying to prevent. We want to have the certification so that people have the confidence when they're dealing with Trinidadians and businesses coming out of Trinidad, that we have, the confidence that people are going to be getting the service that they expect and that we will be recognized for the standard of service we provide.
But Mark, we are at a stage now where foreign exchange is key. And for that to happen, businesses have to export. The businesses that don't export use foreign exchange to import. And what the country is trying to do, what the government is trying to do, I think what structurally we know that we needed to do years and years ago, is to get some of these companies to export. How is the services sector doing in terms of export in this country? So we know that the manufacturing sector contributes. Well, that's hard now, because included in the manufacturing sector now, since a few years ago, have been the petrochemical sector. So it's hard to figure out what pure manufacturing outside the petrochemical does. But usually that is about 7 or 8% of GDP. What do you contribute, first of all, to GDP? And secondly, what do you contribute to exports? And I suspect the issue is, how do we improve that?
Right. So to answer your question there, the services sector contributes, I believe right now it is 56% to GDP. And out of that, the last numbers that we got, which I believe were before the pandemic, because things have been so upended, was only 8% contribution to exports.
To exports.
Yes. So what we look at is, in an exercise that was done through the Arthur Lockjaw Global School of Business, a survey to identify which sectors are the most suitable and prepared to go global in terms of the exports. And we have business and professional services. We have the creative sector, which is like music, TT, and various arts. We have the education sector, so educational tourism. We have the energy sector, obviously. We have the tourism sector, tour operators, event planners. And then we have, of course, which is being significantly focused on the information and technology. or Information Communication and Technology, which is the ICT. Now, I do need to state that there are service opportunities. For example, the yachting sector. I've spoken about it at nauseum, if you want to say. But that sector has had so much opportunity and is such a low-hanging fruit to bring in foreign exchange to Trinidad. And for us to right now be in a position, just due to the lack of facilitation, that we have gone from 500 yachts booking spots to come to Trinidad for their maintenance and service during the hurricane season, where we are only benefiting right now from 29 yachts at my last check with the Yacht Services Association. 29 yachts. 29 yachts is not sufficient to support an industry like that. And when the industry was looking promising for Trinidad, they were earning 56 million US dollars a year. So, the fact that that has now dwindled down to a few 100,000, maybe pushing a million US, if that, based on the numbers that we're getting now, it is something that we need to look at, with urgency. And I can say that we have gotten significant traction right now from the Minister of Trade, who is prepared to actually take a serious look at the yacht sector. And several steps have already been taken as well with respect to problems that were being had in the customs and immigration side of things, which were causing negative views of our service for yachting in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's just one area of services that we can provide in Trinidad, where we're exporting the service, but the client, the user of the service is coming to us to do the work here, and bringing their foreign exchange with them. And there's no requirement other than the import of parts for those that aspect of the yacht services. But a lot of the maintenance and labor and things required for the yacht sector is pure foreign exchange earning.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I know the yachting sector has that potential, but first of all, there has to be a policy disposition towards it. And secondly, there has to be structure and organization and strategy in terms of the support infrastructure once the yachts get here. And there's a service element to that too, because the yachting industry, I mean, these are people who come and anchor their boats outside, and they are living on the boats, they come on shore, etc. So there are lots of services that they actually need. But let me ask you something. You say that your contribution to exports, and therefore is about 8%.
8%, yeah.
So I don't know what that 8% means. I'm not sure if it means 8% of the foreign exchange earned in the country, or if it means 8% of the assessment of the value of exports that Trinidad and Tobago has in the system. And I don't know if that percentage takes into account the 100% involving energy exports as well. But I want to ask you, the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association has done something which is significant, which is that they've said we're going to try to double exports by 2025, okay? And they then imply what that is going to be meaning in terms of jobs and so on. And the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Trade seems to be behind that strategy, and they want to support it. What is your trajectory for growth of the export element of your sector in Trinidad and Tobago? You have a plan for that?
Well, TTCSI does have a recommendation, and the survey that, like I said, has identified the sectors in services that are the most ready for export. Those are the ones that we are looking to for the development, which we are currently going through. with the various programs that we are offering and engaged in. And those are the ones that are going to identify the opportunities and the value of those opportunities for those service providers for Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we do have several studies and analysis done on the size of different sectors globally. Of course, tourism for us is one of the main areas that we should be focusing on as well. And our product needs a lot of development in order to attract a wider tourist base, not just the Europeans, but North Americans as well, and even potentially South Americans. But to give you a number right now in terms of how much it is going to contribute, I will need to do a dive into that. But it's going to be, I mean, I would say based on the current level of exports and being only 8%, I mean, I can project or predict that we may be able to do 3 to 4 times that in the earlies.
All right. Well,
So
I mean, I think you have to have a plan for that that has government support, so that there's
exactly,
a collaborative approach between government
correct.
and the services sector. Now,
No, just to
we
let you
have,
know, but a plan has been submitted. A plan has been submitted for the services sector to government, and I think it was in 2020 it was is provided, but there's been no uptake from the government as yet. So we need the collaboration, and we have started the dialogue with the government to actually try and get those recommendations implemented. Otherwise, we spin
yeah,
it off in mud.
when I was Minister of Planning, we worked with the IDB to get a $20 million US loan focused on services exports. And when I had the America's Competitiveness Conference in 2014, we worked with the IDB to establish a portal in which located all the companies in Latin America, small and medium enterprises mostly, that were interested in collaborating and business-to-business engagement with entities in the Caribbean. And the whole purpose of that was to bring the Caribbean in relation to Latin America to do business-to-business arrangements. Now, I don't know what has happened to that portal and whether it is used or whether the strategic value of it is being taken advantage of. And the second thing is that I think that initially the Minister of Planning supported the Export Thrust project supported by the IDB, but I think for various reasons the whole thing collapsed, and I don't think that loan exists anymore. Do you know if there is any strategic effort that can be collaborative between government and private sector and the TTCSI as the driving organization to have a serious thrust in the services sector? For instance, if we said we wanted to take the 8% in exports now to, let's say, 20% or 25%, a modest amount really, not that large, when you take into account that the services sector contributes 56% to the GDP. Do you think that that is doable? Couldn't we work on a plan like that? Because I venture to say that the services sector in Trinidad and Tobago could export significantly more than your manufacturing sector and has less imported inputs in the process. Because a lot of it is based on intellectual capital and intellectual property and service delivery. Okay? You want to talk about that a little bit? We only have about 3 minutes.
Sure. All right. So quickly, just to answer your first part of the question, we do still have the National Services Exporters Portal, which is about to be launched. It has taken some time to put the structures to it and to get it better organized. But we do have the National Services Exporters Portal, which is going to be an avenue for all service providers to put their services online and to have a directory of the services available to those who qualify to be on the portal who are export ready. They will be accessible on the open market and globally when people tap into services for Trinidad and Tobago. So that is there, and that is continuing the development in terms of the promotion of Trinidad and Tobago services, which, I mean, we're glad that that has continued and has not also collapsed with the grant funding from the IDB. With respect to your second point about the partnership or the collaboration, I've been clamoring for collaboration between government and the private sector for quite some time, because one of the main issues we have is, regardless of what the plan is, and we, like I said, we do have a plan that has been established for the export of services and the development of the service sector, but the government needs to engage that plan with us. And with respect to the private sector's approach and the TTCSI's involvement, the government needs to understand, and we are aware that the government has some difficulty in the implementation of a lot or many of its incentives and initiatives. And as a result of that, we are available to them to assist them in the rollout, as I said earlier, of those initiatives and incentives so that they are properly executed. I mean, you could look at what went on with the vaccination drive with the assistance of the TT Chamber and AmCham and the TTCSI. The vaccinations at Napa went flawlessly, and it's an indication that when the government needs assistance with something, the private sector can step up. So we do need the additional collaboration, and we do want the government to understand that we're here to help them. We are here to help them achieve the best for our country, and it's not just about how much the government is doing for us or how little the government is doing for us, because we need to work together to come to a better understanding of what is needed so that the money that we do have is invested in the right direction, that the private sector can provide the information that the government will take on board and make the decisions for each of the sectors, services or otherwise, that are the best decisions to be made for those specific sectors, and not just policies being made that then have to be worked with by the sectors that they're impacting.
Do you think that the budget recognizes enough the valuable role that the private sector can play? And secondly, do you think that it has seized the opportunity to build on the collaborative effort between private sector and the state during the vaccine drive?
I think the government is aware that the private sector can help, but I believe the government also wants to prove its ability and capability to provide and do its job. But with the amount that needs to be done, and instead of waiting for one project to be handled with their resources over another, we can coexist and collaborate more to have the private sector help roll out strategies where they have them maybe on hold because something else is being focused on. So I think they are aware. We have proven the ability of the private sector to assist. The private sector does give their feedback and their recommendations on how certain sectors should be approached and the opportunities that exist. Sometimes, the sectors feel that the government is making decisions without taking on board their recommendations, and these are the things that we need to understand. The communication needs to be a lot better, where if the government is making a decision that is not consistent with what the recommendations are, that they communicate with the sectors and explain why they have taken that decision and what their goal is for the sector, so that at least the sector can operate within the framework that's being provided and operate successfully instead of operating with a resistive intent to try and continue operating along the same line.
Mark, we've got to close up now for the news. I want to thank you very much for coming on. Maybe we'll talk another time about this, because we've got to build the export capacity of that services sector. And we will talk another time. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Bo. Appreciate you having me on.
Okay. And thank you for watching, viewers. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I'm Bo Tiwari. We move on now to Andrew Chan and the news.